Imagine, just for a moment, that you are sitting quietly after the passing of someone you loved. Maybe it's a friend, a parent, a beloved grandparent. The house is filled with the subtle weight of loss. There are flowers, soft voices, the hush of grief in the air. And in the back of your mind, no matter where you grew up, what language you speak, or which culture you come from, a question lingers. What happens to the soul after death? Who, if anyone, comes to guide us from this life to whatever comes next? Is there truly a messenger of death, a Yama, an angel, a psychopomp, waiting at the boundary between worlds? Or are these just stories, ancient metaphors to help us cope with the unknown? Maybe you grew up in the West, where the image of the Grim Reaper looms large in art and folklore, a robed figure with a scythe, neither good nor evil, but simply the impartial hand of fate. Or perhaps you come from the East, where stories of Yama, the king of death, are told, and where his messengers, or Yama's minions, are said to guide souls on their final journey. Even in Africa, South America, and among indigenous peoples worldwide, stories about guides, guardians, or fearsome spirits who appear at the moment of passing to lead the soul away. But pause for a moment. Strip away the costumes, the names, the different religious traditions. Beneath it all is a human longing to know what becomes of us after our last breath. Is there someone, some being, spirit, or force waiting to greet us? Are we left alone to wander? Or is there order, a system, a cosmic justice that ensures each soul receives what it deserves? It is a question as old as humanity itself, and it has no easy answer. For many, the idea of a messenger of death is a comfort. The thought that someone or something will meet us at the end, explain what is happening, and help us cross over is deeply reassuring. For others, it's terrifying. Images of judgment, punishment, or eternal wandering are enough to keep us awake at night. The legends and stories we inherit become the framework through which we process the great mystery of death. In India, the image of Yama, the god of death, sits on a water buffalo, holding a noose in one hand and a ledger of deeds in the other. When a person dies, it is said that Yama's messengers come to fetch the soul, guide it to his realm, and present it for judgment. Good souls may be reborn or ascend to heavenly realms. Those with unresolved karma may face more difficult journeys. In ancient Greece, the god Hermes was believed to be a psychopomp, a guide for souls, leading them to the underworld. In Egypt, Anubis with the head of a jackal was the soul's escort and protector in the land of the dead. In Christianity, it's sometimes angels, sometimes the archangel Michael, who appears at the moment of death. Even in secular modern culture, the Reaper persists, stripped of religious symbolism, but ever present. Why do these stories exist? Why do so many cultures, independent of one another, tell tales of guides and guardians at the threshold of death? Some scholars suggest it's because humans need narrative. We need to imagine that death is not chaos, not a plunge into darkness, but a passage with rules, helpers, maybe even hope. The figure of the messenger stands at the crossroads of fear and comfort. But let's go deeper. Let's imagine a person in Thailand sitting at a Buddhist funeral, listening to monks chant about impermanence and karma. Or a Mexican family celebrating Dia de los Muertos, believing their ancestors return once a year to visit. Or an American child frightened by a Halloween costume of the Grim Reaper. What unites them all? The desire to understand what happens when life as we know it ends. Buddhism, in particular, offers a perspective both unique and universal. The Buddha taught that after death, the consciousness does not simply vanish, nor does it drift aimlessly. Rather, the journey of the soul, or more precisely, the stream of consciousness, continues, propelled by karma, the sum total of one's actions, intentions, and habits. But in core Buddhist doctrine, there is no literal Yama, no external judge who hands down rewards or punishments. Instead, Yama and his messengers are metaphors, personifications of the natural laws that govern existence. The consequences of our actions, thoughts, and words create the conditions for our rebirth, our joy, our suffering. This might seem cold or impersonal compared to the stories of gentle angels or terrifying demons, but in another sense, it is profoundly fair. No one, no god, no demon, has the power to arbitrarily send you to heaven or hell. You create your destiny. The messenger is, in fact, your own mind, your conscience, your regrets, your aspirations. Still, the stories persist. In many Asian cultures, even devout Buddhists will tell tales of seeing visions at the bedside of the dying, shadows in the corners, mysterious visitors, sudden cold winds. Are these hallucinations? Are they glimpses of a world beyond our senses? Or is the mind, faced with the dissolution of the body, conjuring stories to soothe or warn us in our final moments? Maybe you too have sat with someone as they passed away. Maybe you have felt the room grow strangely silent, as if waiting for something. Maybe you have wondered if, just out of sight, a presence waits, a guide, a messenger, a loved one come to meet the soul on its journey. As you listen to this, perhaps you are hoping for an answer, a definitive statement. Yes, Yama's messengers are real, or no, they are just legends. The truth is, no one knows for sure. The world's greatest mystics, philosophers, and scientists have all wrestled with the mystery of death, and none have returned with irrefutable proof. What we do have are the stories, the experiences passed down through generations, the teachings of sages, the glimpses that come in dreams or at the edge of consciousness. What we also have is the power to choose how we relate to these mysteries. Maybe the real question is not whether Yama's messengers are real, but why we need them to be. Are we afraid of being alone at the end? Do we hope for justice, for someone to weigh our deeds and guide us to our proper place? Do we fear punishment, or do we crave release? Perhaps we imagine messengers of death because it's too frightening to think that death is simply a blank, a void, a vanishing. Or perhaps we hope, deep down, that there is mercy, a hand to hold, a voice to guide, a gentle presence at the threshold. For some, these questions are purely intellectual. For others, they are urgent. In hospitals, in war zones, in the quiet of a lonely room, people die every day, and those who remain are left to wonder, to mourn, and to hope. Sometimes the stories of messengers and guides are the only comfort we have. But there is another layer too. In many traditions, the way you die matters. If you are at peace, if you have made amends, if you die with love in your heart, perhaps your passage is smoother. Maybe the messenger is not an external being at all, but your own state of mind, calm or tormented, clear or clouded. The Buddha taught that a mind steeped in mindfulness, in wisdom, in compassion, naturally finds its way no matter what lies beyond. So, as we begin this series together, I invite you to ask yourself, what do you believe about death? What stories were you told as a child? Have you ever sensed a presence or felt a longing for guidance at moments of loss? This podcast is not here to tell you what to believe, but to open up a space, a sanctuary for inquiry, to explore the myths, the philosophies, and the lived experiences that shape our understanding of death, the soul, and the mysterious journey beyond. Over the next episodes, we will dive into case studies, real stories from different cultures, from both East and West. We will unpack Buddhist teachings, examine the symbolism of Yama and his messengers, and look at the psychological roots of our beliefs. We will ask what it means to live well in light of death, and how our ideas about the afterlife shape our values and choices. For now, simply notice what arises in your mind as you listen. Are you comforted by the idea of a messenger? Are you skeptical? Are you curious? Whatever you feel, know that it is part of the human experience, one that unites us across boundaries of language, nation, and faith. And so, as we set out on this journey together, let us hold the question gently. Do Yama's messengers really exist? Who receives the soul after death? Maybe, in the end, the answer is not out there, but within. As you ponder these mysteries, may you find peace, curiosity, and a little more courage to face the unknown. In the next part, we will begin to explore the world's stories, ancient and modern, about what really happens when we die, and what it means for the living. When you think about death and the journey beyond, what is the first image that comes to your mind? For some, it might be a shadowy figure standing at the end of a long hallway, waiting. For others, perhaps a gentle hand reaching out, a voice whispering softly, "Come with me." Or perhaps it is just a blankness, a sense of being carried away by something vast and unknown. This image, whatever it may be, did not arise out of nowhere. It is shaped by the stories we inherit, the beliefs passed down through generations, and the deep, almost primal yearning to know what comes next. Across the world, in every age and on every continent, people have tried to pierce the veil between life and death. Sometimes their stories are simple. Sometimes they are intricate, layered with meaning and metaphor. But always, at their core, is a deep desire to understand. Who, if anyone, guides us when our time comes? Are there messengers, angels, spirits, deities, or perhaps the echoes of our own actions waiting at the threshold? Take, for example, the tales of ancient Egypt. There, death was not an end, but a journey, and the soul's path was carefully mapped. The Book of the Dead describes how the soul is guided by Anubis, the jackal-headed god, through the perils of the underworld. At the end, the heart is weighed against the feather of truth. If the heart is light, untainted by sin, the soul is allowed to continue. If not, it is devoured by a monstrous creature, ending its journey. In this tradition, the guide is both protector and judge, a companion on the journey, but also a reminder that one's actions matter. Travel to ancient Greece, and you will find a different story. There, the god Hermes takes on the role of psychopomp, literally guide of souls. When a person dies, Hermes appears to lead them to the banks of the river Styx. The ferryman Charon waits, demanding payment in the form of a coin placed in the mouth of the deceased. It is a striking image. Even in death, one is not alone. There are rules, traditions, helpers, and obstacles. The journey is structured, almost bureaucratic in its orderliness. The Greek soul is not abandoned, it is shepherded. In the Christian world, the stories shift again. Angels appear at the bedside of the dying, sometimes gentle and luminous, sometimes awe-inspiring and terrible. The Archangel Michael, sword in hand, is said to weigh souls and defend them against the forces of darkness. For many Christians, this idea is comforting. Death is not an abyss, but a crossing into the arms of God, with trusted guardians along the way. The imagery is rich, filled with choirs and trumpets, golden gates, and radiant beings. Even for those who do not believe literally, the symbolism endures. Something or someone is waiting. Yet in other cultures, the guides are less personal, more mysterious. In many African traditions, the ancestors themselves take on this role. When a person dies, their spirit is welcomed by a lineage of forebears who offer advice and protection. There are rituals to ensure the journey is safe, to placate any spirits who might be angry or lost. The world of the dead is not separate from the world of the living. The two are deeply intertwined. To forget the ancestors is to risk losing one's way. In indigenous American stories, death is sometimes a return, a going home. The land, the animals, the spirits of the trees and rivers all welcome the soul back into a larger whole. The guides may not have names or faces. They are the wind, the moon, the silent presence in the forest. For those who live close to nature, death is not a solitary voyage, but a reunion with all that is. And yet, for all these differences, there is a remarkable similarity. Whether the guide is a god, an angel, an ancestor, or the land itself, the message is the same. You are not alone. There is order, there is meaning, there is help. But how do these stories arise? Why do we feel the need to populate the world beyond with guides and messengers? Some say it is a response to fear, the fear of being abandoned, of losing our way in the dark. Others suggest it is a reflection of the social order. In life, we have parents, teachers, and leaders. In death, perhaps, we hope for the same. Still others look to psychology. The moment of death is the ultimate unknown. To imagine it as a journey with companions and signposts is to make it less terrifying. It gives shape to what would otherwise be formless. In dreams, in visions, in moments of crisis, our minds reach for the familiar. We see loved ones, hear comforting voices, feel unseen hands guiding us forward. Buddhism, particularly in its classic form, offers a different kind of answer. The Buddha did not speak much of angels or gods waiting for the soul. Instead, he spoke of karma, the law of cause and effect. At the moment of death, the mind is propelled by its own tendencies, its habits and attachments, its fears and hopes. The guides are not external beings, but the forces we ourselves have created. Yet, even in Buddhist countries, stories persist of Yama and his messengers. Yama is the judge, the king of death, and his minions fetch the souls of the departed, bringing them before his throne. There, each person's deeds are read aloud, and the future is determined. For many Buddhists, these tales are both a warning and a comfort. They remind us to live well, to avoid harming others, to create good karma. In legendary Buddhism, the Book of the Dead, or Bardo Thodol, describes a vivid and complex journey after death. The soul encounters peaceful and wrathful deities, visions both beautiful and terrifying. These are not meant to be taken literally, but as reflections of the mind's own contents. The peaceful deities arise from positive emotions and wisdom, the wrathful from our fears and ignorance. The true guide, according to these teachings, is awareness itself. If one can remain calm and mindful, Even in the face of the unimaginable, liberation is possible. Modern psychology sometimes echoes these ancient ideas. In the moments near death, people often report seeing visions of loved ones, of light, of familiar places. Are these hallucinations the last fireworks of a dying brain? Or are they glimpses of another reality? Scientists cannot say for certain, but what is clear is that the mind, confronted with its own ending, seeks order. It creates meaning. It calls forth the images it most needs. There are countless stories, old and new, of near-death experiences. People who have been revived after clinical death often report similar things. A sense of leaving the body, floating above the room, watching as doctors and nurses work below. Some describe being greeted by a figure of light or a loved one long since passed. There is a feeling of being welcomed, of being shown the way. Some return with messages of love, of forgiveness, of the need to live more fully. Skeptics point out that these experiences are culturally conditioned. A Christian sees Jesus or angels. A Hindu sees Yama or a beloved ancestor. The details differ, but the structure is the same. A journey, a guide, a moment of reckoning. Perhaps the mind, steeped in stories from childhood, calls forth what it expects. Or perhaps there is a universal truth, glimpsed in different forms. Consider the case of a woman from Japan, raised in a Buddhist family. As a child, she was told that when a person dies, the soul crosses a river, led by invisible helpers. The good are met by smiling faces. The troubled are comforted, not condemned. Years later, after a car accident, she found herself floating above the wreck, watching as strangers rushed to help. In her account, she felt a presence, a sense of being led gently toward a place of peace. She could not see the guide, but she knew it was there. When she recovered, she described the experience as a gift, a reassurance that we are not left alone. Or think of an elderly man in Brazil. All his life he feared death, believing it to be a punishment, a void. When he suffered a heart attack, he too left his body. But instead of darkness, he found himself in a garden, greeted by his mother. She held out her hand and told him it was not yet his time. When he returned, his fear was gone. He lived his remaining years with gratitude, convinced that someone, somehow, would meet him when the time came. In the United States, a nurse who works with hospice patients collects stories from the dying. She has heard hundreds of accounts of music, of light, of loved ones appearing at the bedside. Some patients call out names, reach for hands that no one else can see. Some describe feeling lifted or carried away. The nurse does not judge. She simply listens, honoring each story as true for the one who tells it. Is it possible that all these stories are inventions? The last flickers of consciousness struggling to make sense of the unknown? Or are they windows into a reality that cannot be measured by science? No one can say for sure, but what is clear is that the stories matter. They shape how we die, how we grieve, how we live. Return for a moment to the teachings of Buddhism. The Buddha spoke often of impermanence, of the constant flow of birth and death. He warned against clinging to life, to beliefs, to the self. Yet he also understood the power of story. In the Jataka tales, he told parables of kindness and courage, of foolishness and redemption. He knew that people need stories, not just doctrines. Stories are the vessels in which wisdom travels. Perhaps that is why the image of Yama, the king of death, endures. Even if he is only a symbol, he speaks to something real. We crave order, justice, mercy. We want to believe that our actions matter, that there is a reckoning, but also a guide, a companion for the journey. In Thailand, at a traditional funeral, monks chant passages from ancient texts. The family sits in silence, surrounded by flowers and candles. Somewhere in the ceremony, the monk reminds everyone that death is not the end, but a transformation. The soul is not lost, not abandoned. It is simply moving on, following the tracks laid down by karma. Whether there is a messenger or not, the journey is inevitable. In Mexico, during the Day of the Dead, families build altars, light candles, offer food and flowers to their ancestors. They do not fear the dead. Instead, they celebrate the bonds that persist beyond the grave. The line between worlds is thin. On this night, the living and the dead share the same space. Children laugh, elders tell stories, and everywhere is the sense that no one is ever truly alone. Even in the secular West, where belief in the supernatural has faded, the need for guidance persists. People write wills, plan funerals, choose music and readings. They want their loved ones to be comforted, to have something to hold on to in the darkness. Grief groups form, counseling is offered, rituals emerge. The hunger for meaning, for a narrative that makes sense of loss, does not disappear. So what does it all mean? Are Yama's messengers real? Is there a guide waiting for each of us? Or is the journey ours alone, shaped by the mind and the heart, by the life we have lived and the stories we have believed? Maybe it does not matter. Maybe what matters is how we live now, knowing that the end will come. Maybe the best preparation for death is to be a guide for others, to offer comfort, wisdom, and love. Maybe, in helping others find their way, we prepare ourselves for whatever comes next. When the time comes, some will see a messenger, some will see a loved one, some will see only darkness, or light, or nothing at all. Each journey is unique, but all are part of the great tapestry of existence. And so, as you listen to these stories, as you reflect on your own beliefs and fears, know that you are not alone. Millions before you have walked this path, and millions will follow. Each brings their own hopes, their own questions, their own visions. Whether there are messengers or not, whether the soul is greeted or left to wander, the journey continues. Life flows into death, and death into life in an endless dance. The guides, the angels, the ancestors, the very earth itself, all are part of the story we tell ourselves, the story that gives shape to the mystery. Let yourself rest in the not knowing. Let the stories comfort or challenge you, as they will. And remember, whatever the truth may be, you are part of something vast and beautiful, a river that carries all souls home. There is a quiet truth that seems to echo across the stories and beliefs of humankind. In every land, in every age, beneath the surface of ritual and symbol, we are not only asking what comes after death, but also how that question shapes our lives before it arrives. What we believe about the journey of the soul, about the possibility of guides, messengers, or guardians, leaves deep and subtle footprints on our daily experience. It is not only a question for the dying, but for the living. Consider for a moment the countless small decisions that fill a life, the word of kindness spoken when it would have been easier to remain silent, the forgiveness offered to someone who hurt you long ago, the discipline to wake before sunrise, to meditate, pray, or simply sit in silence. These moments may seem unrelated to the fate of the soul, And yet, in almost every tradition, they are woven into the fabric of the journey that awaits us all. The stories of Yama, the messengers, and the weighing of the heart are not merely warnings or comforts. They are invitations to live consciously, to notice how each thought, word, and deed is part of a much larger narrative. In Buddhist teachings, the importance of the present moment is continually emphasized. There is a gentle but relentless call to awaken here and now, to see clearly, to act with mindfulness. The journey after death, whatever its mysteries, is not separate from the life that precedes it. The consciousness that leaves the body is shaped by the consciousness that inhabited it. If there is a guide at the end, it is the result of the intentions, habits, and understandings cultivated while alive. This is not a philosophy of punishment or reward in the simplistic sense, but rather a natural law. Like water flowing downhill, the mind finds its path according to its nature. The stories of Yama and his messengers may speak of judgment, but the deepest teachings speak of recognition. The soul recognizes its own condition, sees itself in the clear mirror of karma, and moves accordingly. There is no one to bribe, no external judge to flatter or deceive. Yet, for many people, such abstract ideas are difficult to grasp in the turbulence of daily life. It is easier to picture a messenger, a being who will come at the appointed hour to comfort, to guide, to reassure that nothing is truly lost. In this way, the myth and the reality are intertwined. Even for those who accept the teachings of non-self and impermanence, the old stories offer a hand to hold. How then can we use these beliefs in practical ways? How can the stories of messengers and guides help us live more fully, more wisely, more compassionately? Perhaps the answer lies not in the literal truth of these figures, but in their function as reminders. Each time we remember that death may come at any moment, we are brought back to the heart of things. Each time we consider that our actions echo beyond our own lives, we are inspired to act with greater care. In many cultures, rituals surrounding death are as much for the living as for the dead. In Thailand, for example, families gather to chant, offer food, and perform ceremonies not only to help the departed on their journey, but to remind themselves of the impermanence of all things. The monks' chants, the scent of incense, the repetition of ancient verses, all these work together to soften the sharp edges of grief and to anchor the mind in the present. The story of Yama and his messengers hovers in the background, not as a threat, but as a framework for understanding. In Mexico, the Day of the Dead is not a somber event, but a celebration, a festival of memory, laughter, and color. The dead are not gone, but are believed to return for a night to share in the joy of their loved ones. Altars are decorated, stories are told, and the sense of connection persists. Here, the guide is not a distant deity, but the love that binds families across generations. To remember the dead is to honor the living. In Western societies, even among those who do not believe in literal angels or reapers, there is a growing movement to reclaim ritual and meaning around death. People write letters to be opened after they are gone. They record videos for their grandchildren, plant trees in memory, create art, and gather friends for living funerals. In these acts, the boundary between the living and the dead becomes porous, the journey of the soul a shared experience. One of the most powerful practices that arises from the awareness of death is forgiveness. To live as if every day might be the last is to let go of old resentments, to speak words of love, to mend broken bonds. The presence of a messenger, real or imagined, is a prompt to settle one's affairs, to die with as little regret as possible. The Buddhist teaching of reflecting on death is not intended to cause despair, but to encourage a life that is awake, compassionate, and complete. Mindfulness itself becomes a guide. Each breath, each step, each moment of attention is an opportunity to meet whatever arises with clarity and kindness. In this way, the mind is prepared, gradually and gently, for the ultimate letting go. Some Buddhist teachers compare death to falling asleep or entering a new room. If the mind is calm, trusting, and unafraid, the transition is gentle. If the mind is agitated, clinging, or lost in confusion, the journey is more difficult. And yet, perfection is not required. The stories of Yama and the guides are, in the end, stories of mercy as much as justice. Even the wayward soul, the one who made mistakes, is not abandoned. There are always opportunities to return, to make amends, to find the way home. In many traditions, prayers for the dead are offered not only to comfort the living, but to help the departed let go of fear and regret. For those who remain, the rituals and stories serve as bridges across the abyss of loss. When someone we love dies, we are confronted not only with the absence of their body, but with the presence of their memory. The rituals, the prayers, the stories of messengers and journeys help us to grieve, to accept, to find meaning in what can otherwise feel like chaos. They offer a way to say goodbye and to say, in another sense, hello, to the enduring connection that outlasts physical form. Modern psychology has begun to recognize the importance of these practices. Studies show that people who are able to ritualize loss through memorials, storytelling, acts of service, often recover more fully from grief. The act of imagining a guide, a messenger, or a reunion with ancestors is not seen as denial, but as a healthy adaptation. It allows the mind to integrate loss, to find hope in sorrow, to move forward with grace. For some, the idea of an afterlife, of guides and messengers, remains a metaphor, a beautiful story that helps to orient the mind toward virtue and peace. For others, it is an article of faith, a certainty that brings comfort in the darkest hours. In either case, the effect is the same: to inspire kindness, courage, and the willingness to embrace life's uncertainties. There are practical things we can do to prepare for death, inspired by these stories. One is to make peace with our past, to seek reconciliation where possible, to forgive others and ourselves. Another is to cultivate mindfulness, to become familiar with the landscape of our own minds, so that when the time comes, we are not strangers to ourselves. And perhaps most importantly, to love, to let love guide our actions, our words, our intentions. To see the world as filled with potential guides is to recognize the sacredness in each encounter. The person who offers a smile on a difficult day, the friend who listens without judgment, the stranger who helps in a moment of need. Each can be a messenger, a guide along the path. In this sense, the boundary between this world and the next is not as rigid as it seems. The qualities we attribute to celestial messengers, compassion, wisdom, courage, are present here and now, embodied in the people around us and in ourselves. The fear of death often arises from a sense of isolation, of being cast adrift without anchor or support. The stories of Yama and the messengers counter this fear, offering images of accompaniment, guidance, and community. To internalize these stories is to feel less alone, to trust that, whatever happens, there is a way through. Many people find it helpful to reflect on their own mortality, not in a morbid way, but as a practice of awakening. To ask, if I had only a short time left, what would matter most? What have I left unsaid, undone, unacknowledged? What would I want to offer, to give, to share before the journey's end? These questions are not meant to increase anxiety, but to focus the mind on what is real, what is lasting, what is true. In some cultures, the practice of memento mori, remembering death, is woven into the fabric of daily life. A skull on the desk, a painting of a wilting flower, a poem about impermanence, all are reminders to cherish the fleeting, to find beauty in the transient. The presence of a messenger at the end is less important than the cultivation of presence in each moment. The experience of caring for the dying is one of the most profound ways to engage with these questions. To sit at the bedside, to listen to stories, to offer comfort, is to become, in a sense, a guide. The dying often speak of seeing loved ones, of feeling surrounded by light, of being met by those who have gone before. To witness these moments is to glimpse something beyond ordinary understanding, to feel the thinness of the veil between worlds. For those who have lost someone, the pain can be overwhelming, but the stories of guides and messengers offer a balm. To imagine that the loved one is not alone, that there is help, that the journey is not into emptiness but into embrace, is to find peace in the midst of sorrow. Whether or not the stories are literally true, they are deeply real in their effects. As you move through your own life, consider what it means to be a guide for others, to offer a kind word, a listening ear, a helping hand. To live with the awareness that each moment is precious, that each goodbye could be the last, that each act of love ripples outward in ways you may never see. The teachings of impermanence and interdependence are not intended to create fear, but to open the heart, to see that, in the end, we are all messengers for one another, all guides on the path, all travelers moving toward the unknown together. The stories of Yama and the journey of the soul are, in this light, an invitation to be fully alive, to awaken to the beauty and fragility of this existence. There will be times when doubt arises, when fear clouds the mind, when the way forward is not clear. In those moments, remember the stories, the rituals, the acts of kindness that have carried so many before you. Let them be your companions, your guides, your messengers. Whatever you believe about the journey after death, know that you are part of a vast web of being, connected by love, by memory, by the simple act of being human. To live with this awareness is to prepare for whatever may come, with courage, with gentleness, and with hope. So let your life be the message, your actions the guide, your love the bridge that carries you and others across the mystery. In this way, the story of Yama and his messengers becomes not just a tale about death, but a way of living, a practice of presence, a celebration of all that is most real. And when the time comes, as it must for everyone, may you meet the journey with the same grace and openness with which you have lived. Whether you are met by a messenger, an ancestor, or the silent beauty of the unknown, may you go forward in peace, knowing that you are never truly alone. There is a peculiar clarity that can arise when we stop running from the truth of impermanence. In the quiet moments, when the distractions of daily life fall away, something opens inside us. It may begin with a sense of unease, a subtle trembling in the heart, as we remember that nothing lasts. The seasons turn, the faces of loved ones age and change. The milestones of our lives blur into memory. At first, this realization can feel like a loss, a taking away of certainty, a challenge to the stories we have told ourselves about safety and continuity. But if we stay with it, if we allow the awareness of impermanence to settle, it often transforms into something gentler, more luminous. The Buddhist teachings speak of this as a kind of awakening, a seeing into the true nature of things. Everything that arises will also pass away. There is sorrow in this, but also beauty, a freedom that comes from letting go of the need to hold on. The myths of messengers and guides, the images of Yama and his attendants, are not simply tales about what might come after death. They are mirrors, reflecting the journey that is happening all the time, right here in the midst of living. The soul does not wait until the last breath to travel. Every day, in every moment, we are letting go of what has passed, stepping into the unknown. Each change, each ending, is a small rehearsal for the great transition to come. It is in this space that wisdom can arise. When we look honestly at the uncertainty of our lives, when we face the limits of control, a strange kind of peace begins to settle. We see that much of our suffering comes not from what actually happens, but from our efforts to resist, to deny, to demand that things stay the same. The stories of messengers at the end are, in their own way, invitations to relinquish this struggle. They say, let go, trust the process. You will not be abandoned. Many people report that when they have faced their own mortality through illness, loss, or even a sudden moment of danger, life seems sharper, more vivid. The colors are brighter, the taste of food more intense, the sound of laughter more precious. This is not simply the fear of loss, but the joy of seeing things as they are, stripped of illusion. To remember that everything will end is to cherish what is present, to offer thanks for the ordinary wonders of the world. The role of guides, in this sense, is not just to escort the soul after death, but to remind us of the grace available in every instant. The messenger is also the sunrise that bathes your room in gold, the stranger who smiles at you on a lonely street, the memory of a kind word spoken long ago. The myth becomes real, not because of what happens at the end, but because of how it shapes our seeing, our being, our response to the world around us. It is easy, in the rush of modern life, to become numb to this. The demands of work, the ceaseless flood of information, the pressure to achieve and acquire, all these can cloud the mind, close the heart. But sometimes, in the stillness of night or in the hush after a loss, the questions return. What is this life for? Who am I, really, beneath the roles and expectations? What will remain when all else is gone? The stories of Yama and his messengers do not give easy answers. Instead, they point toward a deeper inquiry. They ask us to look within, to discover the ground of being that is not shaken by change. For some, this is found in meditation, in the patient return to the breath, the body, the sensations of the moment. For others, it is in prayer, in service, in the simple acts of care that bind us to each other. As we practice turning toward the truth of impermanence, something softens. We begin to see that the boundary between self and other is not so rigid as we once thought. The pain of another becomes our own. The joy of a friend is also ours. The idea of a messenger guiding us at the end becomes a metaphor for the countless ways we are guided each day, by love, by kindness, by the wisdom of those who have walked before us. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a teaching called interbeing. the recognition that all things arise together, depend on each other, and pass away together. No one lives in isolation. Every breath we take is a gift from the trees, the air, the work of countless beings who came before us. The boundary between life and death, between this world and whatever comes next, is not a wall, but a door, always and closing. This insight can change the way we relate to everything. If we see ourselves as part of a great web of being, then the fear of death is softened. We are not falling into emptiness, but returning to the whole. The stories of messengers and guides become reminders of our belonging, our connection, our participation in the endless dance of existence. There is a tenderness in this view. It allows us to forgive more easily, to let go of grievances that weigh us down. It inspires us to live generously, knowing that each act of kindness ripples outward, touching lives we will never meet. It makes possible a kind of surrender, not in despair, but in trust. A trust that whatever comes, we will be met, held, and ultimately released into the flow of things. Some people find this awakening in moments of great beauty, a sunrise over the ocean, the birth of a child, the silence of a mountaintop. Others find it in moments of profound sorrow, the loss of a friend, the breaking of a dream, the quiet hours of grief. In both, there is a sense of being touched by something greater than oneself, a presence that cannot be named, but can be felt. Perhaps the guides and messengers are not beings at all, but moments of awakening, of clarity, of love. Perhaps they are the sudden recognition that life is precious, that time is short, that we have always been part of a larger story. When this realization dawns, even for a moment, the grip of fear loosens and a deeper peace arises. The wisdom traditions of the world all speak of this in their own languages and images. In Christianity, there is talk of grace, of being received into the arms of God. In Islam, the soul is greeted by angels, offered mercy and forgiveness. In Hinduism, the journey is guided by ancestors, gods, and the deep current of Dharma. In Buddhism, the passage is shaped by awareness, by the fruits of practice, by the softening of the heart. What these stories share is not a certainty about what happens after death, but an invitation to live well now, to make each day a practice of awakening, each encounter an opportunity for compassion, each breath a reminder of the miracle of existence. Sometimes, in moments of reflection, we may sense the presence of those who have gone before us, a whisper in the wind, a memory that stirs the heart, a feeling of guidance when we most need it. Whether this is real in any objective sense does not matter as much as the effect it has on our lives. The sense of being connected, of being watched over, can bring comfort and courage in difficult times. There are those who, nearing the end of life, report seeing loved ones waiting for them, feeling the approach of a guide, experiencing a profound peace that surpasses understanding. These moments, whether they are glimpses of another world or simply the flowering of a peaceful mind, are precious. They remind us that the journey is not to be feared, that we are never truly alone. For the living, the challenge is to remember this in the midst of everyday struggles. It is easy to forget, to be swept up in anxiety, resentment, and distraction. But each time we pause, each time we return to the present, we touch the ground of being that is always here, always supporting us. The stories of Yama and the messengers, of guides and journeys, are not meant to frighten or control, but to open the heart. They ask us to consider what kind of life we want to live, what legacy we wish to leave, what relationships we want to heal. They invite us to awaken to the miracle of our own existence, to the preciousness of each moment, to the beauty that is always available when we stop and look. In this way, the contemplation of death becomes a path to deeper life. The awareness of endings sharpens our appreciation of beginnings. The knowledge that all will be lost invites us to treasure what we have. The sense of being guided, whether by mythic messengers or by the gentle hand of love, gives us the courage to face the unknown. Some may say that these are just stories, that there is nothing beyond this life, no guide, no journey, no return. But even so, the stories serve their purpose. They help us make sense of what cannot be understood, give shape to the formless, offer meaning in the midst of chaos. They provide a framework for living, a context for grief, a source of hope. For others, the stories are more than metaphor. They are glimpses of a reality that lies just beyond the reach of reason. To believe that we are met, accompanied, received, is to live with a sense of reverence, to approach each day as a gift, each encounter as sacred. Wherever you find yourself, whatever you believe, the journey is the same. To be human is to walk toward the unknown, to let go of what is familiar, to trust that there is a way through. The messengers, the guides, the images of Yama and his attendants are companions on the road, reminders that the path has been traveled before, that help is available, that we are part of something vast and enduring. In the end, perhaps the greatest awakening is this: to realize that love is the true guide, the messenger that never fails, love that is patient, love that forgives, love that endures beyond the grave. When we live from this place, when we let love be our guide, the fear of death recedes, the sorrow of loss is softened, and a quiet joy fills the heart. So let yourself rest in this awareness, even if only for a moment. Let the stories do their work, loosening the bonds of fear, opening the gates of compassion, reminding you that, whatever comes, you are held, guided, and cherished. The journey is not easy. The road is sometimes dark, but you do not walk it alone. Each step, each breath, each act of kindness is both a farewell and a welcome, a letting go and a coming home. This is the wisdom of the messengers, the awakening that comes from looking deeply, the peace that arises when we stop trying to control what cannot be controlled. It is available to everyone, always, in the simple act of being present, of loving what is, of trusting in the mystery. The stories may end, but their gifts remain, woven into the very fabric of your life. Let them bless you, comfort you, and inspire you as you move ever onward, carried by the river of existence, guided by the light within and the love all around. In the long hush that comes after the end of a story, there is often a subtle shift, a gentle settling of dust and thought. The questions that once seemed so sharp and insistent begin to soften, their edges blurring as they mingle with silence. In the space where words once filled the air, a different kind of knowing begins to arise. A knowing that lives not in the mind, but in the heart and in the body, in the quiet presence of being itself. All along, the stories of messengers and guides, of journeys and reckonings have invited us to look not only toward the mystery of death, but also toward the mystery of life itself. We have traveled together across many landscapes, across rivers and deserts of tradition, across mountains of belief, through valleys of doubt and hope. With every story, every teaching, every shared silence, we have walked a little further along a path that is both ancient and new, both deeply personal and entirely universal. As the journey draws to a close, it is natural to wonder what, if anything, has changed. Are we closer to an answer, or has the mystery only deepened? Has the contemplation of guides and messengers brought comfort, or has it stirred new uncertainties? Perhaps the greatest gift of these stories is not certainty at all, but a deeper capacity to dwell within the questions, to rest gently in the unknown, to allow the mind to settle like a leaf on a quiet pond, unhurried and unafraid. There is a beauty in living without the demand for final answers. The world opens in new ways when we give ourselves permission to not know, to move through life with curiosity rather than conclusion. The idea of a messenger, be it Yama, an angel, an ancestor, or a beloved memory, becomes less a destination and more a companion, a gentle presence that encourages us to meet each moment as it is, with the fullness of our being. It is here, in the slow turning of attention toward the present, that awakening unfolds. The great traditions speak of enlightenment as a sudden flash, a moment when the veil is lifted and all is seen clearly. But for many, awakening is not a single event, but a gradual opening, a process of softening and surrender, a gentle dawn that reveals the contours of a landscape previously hidden in shadow. It is in this unfolding that the deepest wisdom is found, the wisdom of compassion, of humility, of the quiet joy that arises when we are truly present with ourselves and with others. The contemplation of impermanence, far from bringing despair, can become a source of profound appreciation. To see that all things pass is to recognize the preciousness of each breath, each encounter, each ordinary moment. The practice becomes one of cherishing what is here, not clinging or grasping, but savoring the taste of life with gratitude and wonder. In the face of loss, in the wake of endings, the heart remembers what truly matters: relationships, kindness, courage, and beauty. These are the treasures we carry with us, the gifts that endure when all else falls away. The stories of death and what may come after are often filled with images of crossing, of thresholds and gates, of journeys through darkness into light. These images are powerful, not because they tell us what to expect, but because they mirror the crossings we make every day. Every time we say goodbye, every time we let go of a dream or a fear, every time we stepped into the unknown, we enact the ancient drama of transformation. The presence of a guide, whether imagined or real, gives us courage for these crossings. It reminds us that the way has been traveled before, that others have faced the same fears, the same longings, and have found their way through. There is also a humility in this perspective. No matter how much we learn, how much we practice, how many stories we gather, we remain creatures of the mystery. Our knowledge is always provisional, our understanding incomplete. And yet, it is in this very incompleteness that the heart finds its home. To stand in awe before the unknown, to bow to the vastness of existence, is to participate in the sacred dance of life and death, creation and dissolution. For those who grieve, the stories of messengers and guides can offer solace. They do not erase the pain of loss, nor do they promise reunion in any simple sense. but they do provide a context for grief, a way to hold sorrow within a larger frame. The rituals and prayers, the memories and symbols, create a space where the living and the dead can meet, if only for a moment, in the shared language of love. Grief becomes not a wound to be hidden, but a bridge, a place of meeting, of remembrance, of gentle connection. The presence of uncertainty does not mean the absence of meaning. In fact, meaning often grows in the soil of unknowing. The stories we tell, the rituals we perform, the silent acts of care and remembrance, all weave together to create a tapestry of significance. We may never know for certain what happens after death, but we can know with utter clarity the effect that this question has on our lives. It invites us to live more deeply, to love more bravely, to act with greater integrity and compassion. It is said that the dying sometimes see their lives flash before them, a cascade of images, moments, choices, and faces. Whether this is a literal event or a metaphor, it captures something essential. In the end, what remains is not the accumulation of achievements or possessions, but the imprint we have left on the hearts of others. The guide we meet at the threshold may be none other than our own conscience, our own capacity for kindness and forgiveness, our own willingness to let go. It is said that the dying sometimes see their lives flash before them, a cascade of images, moments, choices, and faces. Whether this is a literal event or a metaphor, it captures something essential. In the end, what remains is not the accumulation of achievements or possessions, but the imprint we have left on the hearts of others. The guide we meet at the threshold may be none other than our own conscience, our own capacity for kindness and forgiveness, our own willingness to let go. The teachings of Buddhism, like those of many spiritual traditions, return again and again to the practice of presence. To be here, now, fully awake to what is arising, is to touch the eternal in the midst of the fleeting. The awareness that is cultivated in meditation, in prayer, in the acts of daily living, is the same awareness that carries us across all boundaries. It is the inner guide, the light that does not waver, the source of peace that endures even as everything else falls away. As you listen, you might notice subtle changes in the way you meet your days. Perhaps there is a little more patience, a little more kindness, a greater willingness to pause and listen, to see the world with fresh eyes. Perhaps the stories of Yama and his messengers, or the rituals of your own tradition, become less about what happens after death and more about how you wish to live before it comes. Perhaps the awareness of impermanence inspires not fear, but a deeper commitment to love and to serve. There is an old saying that the purpose of spiritual practice is not to escape death, but to die before you die, to let go of the false, the rigid, the fearful, and to awaken to what is real, free, and unbounded. The stories of death, then, become stories of life. The journey through the unknown becomes a journey into the heart of being itself. Each of us will walk this path in our own way. Some will find comfort in faith, others in reason, others in the simple beauty of the world. Some will lean on tradition, others will create their own rituals, their own ways of marking the passages of life. There is no single right way, no formula that fits all. What matters is the sincerity with which we walk, the honesty with which we meet our own hearts, the openness with which we receive the mystery. The final gift of the stories of messengers and guides may be this: They allow us to hold both certainty and uncertainty, hope and fear, longing and acceptance, all in the same tender embrace. They teach us to trust the journey, to let go of what we cannot keep, to open to what cannot be lost. If there is a guide waiting at the end, may it be the love you have given and received, the wisdom you have cultivated, the peace you have made with yourself and the world. If there is a messenger, may it come in the form you most need, in a dream, a memory, a touch of wind, a shaft of light. And if there is nothing at all, may the simple awareness of being, here and now, be enough. As the story concludes, let yourself rest in this gentle space, neither clinging nor pushing away. Let the questions remain, alive and luminous, like stars in the night sky. Let the stories do their quiet work, softening the heart, deepening the gaze, preparing you for the next step, whatever it may be. For in the end, the journey belongs to you. The meaning you make, the love you share, the presence you bring. These are your gifts to the world, your legacy, your offering. Trust them, cherish them, let them carry you as you have carried others across the river, through the darkness, into the endless unfolding of what is. And so, with a heart that is both strong and tender, may you walk forward, awake to the beauty of this life, at peace with the mystery of what lies beyond. You are guided, you are loved, you are and always have been at home.